So as I mentioned before, continuing this study, the earth looked dramatically different than the way it does today. All the nations were together, as the Bible says, and Jerusalem was in the center of it, surrounded by these nations. But again, Satan had intervened, and he had created a creation of animals to rule and dominate by brute force and strength, terrorizing other God's creation or other animals, and he had created a hybrid human species of giants. This hybrid human species of giants were altered through sons of God, somehow genetically altering an embryo, creating this hybrid species of wicked men, in which God had to intervene and flood the world. And you can see in this video of this globe, what you notice is the world expanding, and lots of blue is showing up. Remember, in the previous study we talked about the firmament of the earth, which was an ice-like atmosphere, and God had ordained that ice-like atmosphere to melt, which would then result in the world expanding. As with water to a water balloon, it expands. Water expands out, and you can see that in this example of the globe where more water is expanding. The world is getting larger. Continents are separating, as if a kid who builds a sandcastle and water comes up on the shores of the beach, destroying the sandcastle. And again, you can see the continents in which they once fit together are just slowly drifting apart, because God had flooded the world to destroy what Satan had done, trying to prevent the Son of God of appearing. And this caused the entire world to change dramatically. Everything changed. Egypt became a desert, which it might have already been a desert, but we know that it's become what this is right now. And it's never rained in Egypt in quite a long time. But this is the state in which, for example, the Sphinx, which was built pre-flood, now looks like today post-flood. And you could tell that above the sands, this Sphinx was captured, I think in the 40s or 30s. I can't remember when this photo was taken, but nonetheless, the Sphinx is exposed to the environment, and what you actually notice is that it's subject to wind erosion, where it looks like the stone is rusting because of the wind, and the sand is slowly chipping away at the structure. And this is another close-up of the picture where you can see the structure of the stone looks like Swiss cheese. It has a bunch of holes in it because the grainy sand and wind just slowly erodes the top part since it was exposed above sand. And this is at the Sphinx as it's being excavated, and if you notice at the paws of the Sphinx, there's no wind erosion due to the sand. It's somewhat in good condition. And this was it after it's been excavated, and what you notice, it has three forms of renovations on it. You can see the top portion, which was exposed, is subject to wind erosion. You can see the middle is partially in good condition, and there's no wind erosion. And you can see the bottom has new bricks on top of the original, as if it was renovated. Again, it's like someone found it for themselves and decided to reconstruct or renovate the Sphinx to some form of glory. And then again, as you can see, it just slowly just got toppled with tons of sand. Now, this is a clue I want you to pay attention to suggest what happened, which reinforces the flood. If you look inside the Sphinx encampment and you look alongside it, what you'll see is water erosion. You see deep, deep, deep penetrated vertical indentions inside the Sphinx encampment, which again suggests from a geologist that it must have rained. But Egyptologists will tell you that's impossible. It hasn't rained in Egypt in, well, who knows when, but they tell you for a very long time it has not rained. But again, if you can do the research yourself, and you'll see it that there are cracks in the Sphinx impediment around the encampment, showing that water must have been penetrating these rocks, because it's the only way in which you can get the types of evidence that you see right there on the stones. So that must have meant that the Sphinx was built, and it must have rained so much, produced so much water to just flood this entire encampment to where we saw in the previous photos. Nonetheless, to also prove that there was a flood, if you look inside look on the seafloor between the continents of North, South America, and Africa, what you'll notice something is quite remarkable to point out that there was a flood. There are a significant amount of groove lines or drag marks rather. And if you look between North America and the east coast of Africa, along with South America, what you'll see are lines after lines after lines after lines. And coincidentally, there are continents in opposite direction of each of those lines, which again shows that the flood had pushed these continents to the very positions that they are today. And this is the tectonic plate. This is the Grand Canyon. And as you can see, there's land on one end, land on the other end, and what? Separated by water. Just like the previous photo we saw, where North America and Africa is what? Separated by water. Water separates. It divides. You know, you can also pair this up with how Jesus said he's the living water. Now, he divides us. He's the division between Satan and the Lord. Again, so this is the world as it looks today, and this is Turkey. And the Bible says, then the ark rested in the 7th month, the 17th day of the month, on the mountain of Ararat. Ararat is in Turkey. This is the mountain of Ararat, which the Bible says Noah's ark rested. And once again, men multiplied on the earth through Noah's sons. The Bible says, these were the families of the sons of Noah, according to their generations, in their nations, and from these the nations were divided on the earth after the flood. But Noah had a great-grandson named Nimrod, who built and began the Babylonian Empire. So Nimrod was the first king of Babylon. He actually started with the beginnings of this empire. The Bible says, Cush begot Nimrod, who is Noah's great-grandson, remember. And he began to be a mighty one on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar, which is the southern part of Babylon. From the land he went to Adria and built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Kala, and Resen between Nineveh and Kalha, and that is the principal city. I know I destroyed these names. I know I did. Nonetheless, here were the gods of the Sumerians, which is the southern part of Babylon, where they were from Sumer, and this is the gods that they worshipped. They were called the Anunnaki.
But long before Babylon, as long as 6,000 years ago, another remarkable civilization evolved. Its people were the Sumerians, who had an extraordinarily advanced culture.
Their list at first just almost sounds like a whole list of our whole society. They had the first bicameral Congress, they had the first writing, they had the first school systems, and you just go on and on and on. So you have to ask, well, where did all this come from? And I think that you need to turn to the ancient Sumerians themselves and listen very carefully to what they have to say, because what they have to say, not just in one place, but over and over and over again, is that they were taught civilization by these beings that came from the heavens to the earth. They called them the Anunnaki.
The Sumerians wrote down their history on clay tablets like these, which lay ignored in a Berlin museum for half a century. Few people have been able to decipher this ancient language, but one of them is Zechariah Sitchin.
The writings and the pictorial evidence left behind by the Sumerians going back 6,000 years speak and depict people who came from another planet called Nibiru, and many of the depictions show them much bigger, at least by a third, perhaps more than the average human being, so they were giants.
This Sumerian cylinder seal from a Berlin museum is astonishing for several reasons. First, It depicts our solar system with the sun at the center and the planets arrayed around it, a fact not known to European science till around 300 years ago. It also shows the planet Pluto, which we didn't discover till 1930. And amazingly, there's another planet, which the Sumerians called Nibiru, and believed that it was from where the Anunnaki, or celestial giants, came from.
If you look at the three figures depicted here, they all look more or less the same size. But if you bear in mind that this figure of the deity, that he is seated, and you add from the knee to the hip to his size, you will realize that he is about 10 feet tall, a giant, one of those who from heaven to earth came.
So this is a depiction of the Anunnakis from that time period, the celestial beings. Now they'll tell you, those fascinated with the Anunnaki, that they came here to this planet 400,000 years ago and somehow created human beings to mine Earth by somehow taking their sperm and injecting women with it, and then from that creation they created these giant beings, in which when they came back again after they departed, they fell in love with these women and they start taking wives of these women that they created. It's just remarkable to me that some people find it so fascinating, because you ask yourself, why would beings from another planet come here to take gold? When you look at these ancient times and you don't see nothing of the gold that they were supposed to come here and get. Or you see these celestial beings supposed to come here and create a human species, but they don't do anything to advance the human species. They simply come here to do what? Be worshipped. But some folks, those who are scholars, will say that the ancient Sumerians of the ancient times in Babylon were the first ones for this, so we should listen to them. But yet, there's just as this is so far-fetched, and you may want to think that the God of the Bible is far-fetched, the God of the Bible is saying, I was here before any of them. And I'm telling you that these were created beings that I made that were supposed to worship me, and they didn't, so I cast them to earth, and all they're doing is simply trying to get what they couldn't get here. Worship. It's just remarkable who or how a person chooses what they want to believe in. Well, it's not too far-fetched to understand that, because we all have free will, but just understanding that, looking at these sculptures and these inscriptions and hieroglyphics of these ancient civilizations, that it's somehow given this layer of truth just because it's so old. But when you look at it in context of what they're saying, it makes no sense. A celestial being comes from a planet to create humans by genetically creating them and altering their DNA to then make giants so they can be worshipped and excavate gold. It just doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't, because we don't see any evidence of what they're saying. But yet the Bible, another ancient text that was written thousands of years ago, we see a plethora of just evidence of it over and over and over again, which we just simply describe with the seal of perfection, the flood, the dinosaurs, and the sons of God. So we're going to continue our study now with the Anunnakis. And again, this is a picture of them, and you can see that they're identified by having 4 wings. They're identified by being human, looking human. They have something in their hand, I believe is a pine cone, and some type of purse of some sort that they carry, and a flying smaller bird-like creature with a human being in it, or it looks a human-like person in it. Along they have weaponry, because this one has daggers strapped in his waist. And the last is that they have this rope dangling from their waist. It's some type of robe, and from that rope is a thread or some type of garment or rope that lingers down from their waist.